Thank you. Pete Buttigieg with offices on the 14th floor of this building, Mayor of South Bend.
Thank you, sir.
And let me begin by thanking you for acknowledging Chief Cox and Audra. I did reach out to Governor Holcomb and let him know that South Bend forgives him for stealing our fire chief, but only because we know, as Councilwoman Williams-Preston put it, that he'll still be serving us, along with the rest of the state. And I want to thank you for the chance to speak with you this evening. Over the past 8 years, I have stood right here many times, presenting, celebrating, occasionally pleading, and tonight I'm here to offer one last report from city offices, and I thought the best way to use the time would be to reflect on how far we've come. January 2012 marked just over 47 years since the last Studebaker rolled off the line. It was about 1 year since South Bend had been named a dying city by a national magazine, and every administration and council in the decades up to then had been undertaking heroic work simply to keep the city afloat. The 2010 census showed a population in decline, and the blows that we had faced as an economy were everywhere, in the factories haunting our downtown skyline and collapsing vacant houses dragging down the well-being of our neighborhoods. South Bend's wounded psyche loomed over us, and discussions on economic development weighed questions like whether to demolish the Chase Tower, now Liberty Tower. A debate was raging on whether the newly opened Eddy Street Commons sounded the beginning of the end for downtown retail in this city. And even the future of Kovaleski Stadium was in doubt. Today, thanks to the resilience of our community and the partnership between our administration and our Common Council, South Bend's trajectory has been transformed. Our population is in a fragile but unmistakable increase, while our unemployment rate has fallen dramatically. We are no longer called a dying city, but a beta city, a national model for innovative practices. We're at the cutting edge of urban mobility, and we are pioneering new systems for lifelong learning. Last year, South Bend was nationally recognized as a race-informed city by Governing Magazine, acknowledging efforts to recognize and remove barriers to inclusive economic development. Working with the Common Council, we have prioritized neighborhood development, with the 2020 budget, I believe, being our most neighborhood-centric yet. Neighborhood development has included affordable housing on the west and south sides, a robust Light Up South Bend program led by the council, and the largest investment in public spaces in our city's history. A strategic expansion of smart sewer technology is benefiting our river and saving ratepayer dollars. Our downtown, once dominated by one-way highways that fast-track drivers away from our core, now boasts complete streets that welcome visitors to enjoy a bustling urban center. Cranes mark our skyline, plural, as business responds to our public investment in people-centered design. And of course, enormous challenges remain before us as well. Our recently completed disparity study sets up our path toward more inclusive city purchasing, but also quantifies a clear gap between our use and our goal when it comes to minority and women-owned businesses. We've put forward historic investment toward the housing of our homeless neighbors, but long-term housing for all is not yet fully within our grasp. And despite substantive reforms to the South Bend Police Department, we know there is more we can do to build trust. Even in our final year, we have been sprinting through the tape, working to serve this city, creating a new program for rental inspections, expanding our home repair resources, and finalizing an aggressive climate action plan. We have equipped our successors with a plan for inclusive purchasing, a policy pivot toward permanent supportive housing, and a series of community action group meetings on law enforcement policies and procedures. Neighborhood investment has been a major focus throughout. When I entered office, residents were demanding that we act on the vacant and abandoned houses, dragging down the blocks on which they stood. After convening a vacant and abandoned property task force made up of community members, we unveiled an ambitious plan to address 1,000 properties in 1,000 days. And through strong collaboration with neighborhood associations and city teams, we finished with months to spare. Code enforcement has continued work on vacant houses beyond the initiative and are now rehabilitating those homes more than 60% of the time, while also adjusting practices to make sure they are reasonable and supportive. In March, we brought the Rental Safety Verification Program before Council for unanimous passage. The program has already been a valuable tool validating good landlords and holding bad ones to account. To support homeowners, in January we announced over $1 million available for home repairs, largely in underserved and predominantly minority neighborhoods, in addition to nearly $3 million in federal grants for lead abatement projects. We've invested in affordable housing with groups like 466 Works on the south side and South Bend Heritage on the west side. This year we announced more equitable utility rates, tailored to each resident's ability to pay. And the last 8 years witnessed a turnaround for many of our economic indicators. As unemployment fell from 11.8 to 3.9%, South Bend's population rose once again. City partnerships have brought in over $900 million in private investment, representing over 7,500 jobs. To address homelessness, we provided the biggest increase in resources for homelessness since the opening of the Center for the Homeless in the 1980s. Connecting with local partners, we funded a winter amnesty program, ensuring that anyone experiencing homelessness has overnight shelter during the winter months. And aiming for longer-term solutions, we've partnered with Hope Ministries and the Center for the Homeless to establish permanent supportive housing units throughout the community. And I am thankful for all who made possible the recent announcement that we have supplemented existing resources with low-barrier day shelter during construction at the library. In 2016, I issued an executive order establishing a diversity and inclusion initiative for the city of South Bend. Soon our city had its first diversity and inclusion officer who led efforts to find and address disparities across our community. Through the office, we commissioned 2 landmark studies, the Racial Wealth Divide Profile and the Disparity Study, knowing that the results might be uncomfortable, but knowing we needed to face the facts to anchor strategies for the future. The Racial Wealth Divide Profile documented a median income of black households half that of white households in South Bend, and showed African American families twice as likely to be in liquid asset poverty. The Disparity Study found that while our marketplace has an availability of roughly 15% for minority and women-owned businesses, current city spending uses them less than 12% of the time, with greater gaps in particular for African American-owned businesses. These studies set a benchmark and, most importantly, create a legal basis for our intentional action on the path ahead. We've also worked to attack the racial wealth divide, working with the West Side Small Business Incubator, expanding access to capital, encouraging CDFIs, and securing grant money for economic inclusion. And just a few weeks ago, the Common Council unanimously replaced the inclusive spending ordinance to better align with the framework put forward in the disparity study. I know it will be up to my successor to take this work to the next level, but we have made real progress on this enduring community priority. When it comes to public safety, in 8 years we have opened 3 new fire stations with energy-efficient features and technologies to keep firefighters safe while they work to do the same for us. In 2014, we opened the Luther J. Taylor Fire Training Center that now trains departments across the region. The department boasts an ISO rating that marks South Bend as one of the top fire safety cities in the country. The department has distributed thousands of smoke detectors in neighborhoods across South Bend, ensuring fire prevention is as strong as fire response. And the South Bend Police Department has seen change and reform. The promotion process has been upgraded and standardized. A new duty manual has replaced and updated department policies and procedures. We unveiled a transparency hub that reports out data on crime, recruiting, community complaints, and more. Patrol officers are now equipped with body-worn cameras, and the department has adopted better training practices at every level of service. Crucially, the city has moved toward a national best practice model for gun violence prevention. What started as the South Bend Anti-Violence Commission has now become the Group Violence Intervention, a proven strategy connecting social services, law enforcement, faith leaders, and the community at large. The strategy includes a street outreach team that aims to interrupt the cycle of violence, and a model now is one that other cities are studying. We are still losing far too many young people to gun violence, but we have also been lifted up by seeing the human impact of lives changed by the GVI strategy. We know that our city is safest when it can foster an environment of mutual trust between residents and officers. The pain this community expressed in the aftermath of this summer's officer-involved shooting of Eric Logan made clear that we still have a long way to go until we've reached that goal. But instead of waiting for the conclusion of special prosecutors' investigation into the incident, over the past several months, our community has partnered with our administration to engage in the public safety process, and residents have stepped up to drive positive change. Through the course of 8 public community action group meetings, the Board of Safety has spread awareness and gathered feedback on police policies and procedures. Recommendations from the public and the board are with the police department now, with particular interest in more de-escalation and more bias training for officers. We've also engaged the services of 21CP, national experts in law enforcement practices, led by those who drove the Obama administration's police reform strategies, to review practices and provide expert advice. Combining national best practices with resident input will enable greater trust and a stronger department for the future. The Department of Public Works has pioneered innovative approaches across its many critical services. When I first took office, our combined sewer separation agreement with the EPA set an impossibly high burden on residents after we did the calculations to learn just what it would cost in ways that had not been visible before. But using technology first introduced under my predecessor, we've developed an approach with the potential to save South Bend ratepayers $500 million and meet the same environmental goals with encouragement from the council. Innovations in leaf and trash pickup have made the process more user-friendly and cost-effective. We've piloted programs that measure road temperatures to determine the best mixture of salt and sand to deal with snow and ice. And we've continued to support the council's innovative Light Up South Bend program with discounts for residents to buy solar-powered lamp posts for their homes. But some challenges will stretch beyond the work of a single administration. During my time in office, South Bend experienced 2 historic floods and more than 1 polar vortex event, endangering residents' lives and demanding citywide emergency responses. As climate change presents us with a new normal, reactive measures will not be enough to counter the present danger and the future damage that we face. To that end, our sustainability team recently released the South Bend Climate Action Plan, a bold strategy that upholds the Paris Agreement goal of 26% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 and carbon neutrality by 2050. This plan will be a living document, updating with the times, and it will continue to require buy-in from the entire community. But I'm convinced that South Bend will be consistent with its history of rising to a challenge. At the start of my second term, we created the new Division of Venues, Parks, and Arts, a visionary team that has since been recognized as a national leader in its field of work. In 2017, VPA announced the MySB Parks and Trails Plan, which represented the largest investment in public spaces in our city's history. By the end of the plan, over $50 million will have been spent on projects throughout our community, all notably without a tax increase. Major projects have included the $3.5 million expansion of the Charles Black Center, a pillar of the LaSalle Park neighborhood, and the privately funded restoration of the Studebaker Fountain in Leaper Park. I joined many of you just 2 weeks ago for the ribbon cutting at Howard Park, one of the most forward-looking parks in the entire country, with half of the funding coming from outside sources. We've also redone 19 neighborhood parks and set an ambitious goal to increase access so that 80% of households are within a 10-minute walk to a park, all with a view toward equity and in the conviction that every single resident deserves access to excellent facilities. Our finance team has worked behind the scenes to help with each of these achievements. They've helped to make the best use of taxpayer dollars, set a new standard for transparency, and in navigating our approach to that fiscal curb, partnering with the council, we maintained our AA bond rating, independent confirmation that we are running one of the most fiscally sound cities in the state. Our HR team led by example, saving millions of dollars, switching to an employee health clinic, and expanding options for retirement benefits. We now have paid volunteer hours and have standardized year-end review processes for professional development. I was proud to sign into law a higher minimum wage for city employees with strong encouragement from the council. And in 2018, we became one of the first cities in the state to offer employees paid parental leave. And I continue to hope that area employers will take notice and follow suit. Our legal department is one of the strongest in the state, working behind the scenes to bring our bold ideas forward. In addition to their everyday work informing our services, they have now handled nearly 20,000 requests for public records without a single finding of violation. Our innovation and technology team, which started with a handful of employees stuffed into a storage room under the stairs, is now a nationally renowned group on the cutting edge of civic tech. We started with the basics, establishing a 311 center so that residents had a simple connection to vital services. Today, 311 is so vital to our operations, it's hard to believe that 8 years ago it was nothing but a campaign promise. We've added a business analytics division to optimize those services, modeling our SB Stat program after successful operations around the country. And South Bend has come to the forefront of the civic technology space, partnering with foundations and national initiatives on everything from lifelong learning to transportation for lower wage workers. Last month, we opened the South Bend Technology Resource Center. Building off previous efforts to bridge the digital divide, like the free downtown public Wi-Fi and the high-speed internet in West Side community centers, the TRC will host cross-sector partnerships, data training, digital inclusion events, and more. Despite these many strides, the next administration is going to be faced with a new set of choices on some of South Bend's most pressing issues. Incoming Mayor Mueller will, of course, decide on his own priorities and strategies. But it is clear that some issues will persist across administrations, and we have worked to make sure that there is a healthy running start for the next administration and the next council on these key issues. Public safety remains central. Too many young people are caught up in the cycle of gun violence, with consequences that go far beyond shooter and victim. To help prevent violence, we have budgeted for a new division of community initiatives, which includes over $350,000 for building and empowering local anti-violence programs. And we must continue community trust building, shaping our police work through resident input. Despite our city's recent growth, we still face the challenge of ensuring that all residents have equal opportunity to participate in our economy. We've worked to ensure that a robust budget and resources are available to see to it that the work launched by the Diversity and Inclusion Office and the Disparity Study will be carried forward with urgency in the future. It will be up to the next administration to decide the future of the South Shore Line, which has the potential to change our ties to the third largest city in the country. But we know that the groundwork we have undertaken will help future leaders unlock the enormous potential of a faster link to Chicago. And while this administration has committed more resources for homeless residents than we have seen in the past 30 years, we know that there remain many hills to climb in ensuring our city delivers fully on the need to expand permanent supportive housing and move toward the goal of safe housing available to all. This decade has also been characterized by remarkable developments in South Bend's relationships with other cities, with the county, with universities, with state and federal governments, and a historic partnership with the original stewards and residents of this place, the Pekagan Band of Potawatomi Indians. I look forward to seeing future leaders continue to find partners who help South Bend punch above its weight class in America's community of communities. The challenges and opportunities ahead for our city are enormous, and I have never felt more optimistic about the future of our hometown. As a soon-to-be former mayor and an enthusiastic resident of this city, I will join my fellow South Bend residents in supporting Mayor Mueller, his team, and the Common Council as they move forward together. I want to recognize that none of this progress would have been possible without countless community partners, too many to name. Our schools, our colleges, and our universities have encouraged their students and faculty to bring their time and talents into the South Bend community on efforts from neighborhood development to lead exposure, demonstrating what is possible when talent meets purpose. Through our relationship with this community school corporation, we've been able to advance public health through lead screenings and make government more accessible to neighborhoods through Mayor's Night Out events. And the young members of the South Bend Youth Task Force have already made their mark on our city's future. Our new economy was made possible through the grit and faith of local business leaders. Our community programs were enhanced by networks of local faith leaders. Social services, activists, and neighborhood stakeholders have played an integral role in propelling South Bend to a brighter tomorrow. I want in particular to thank all of our extraordinary city employees, some of whom are with us tonight. Together with appointees on boards and commissions who volunteered countless hours, you public servants have shaped this city that we love. The dedication of all who serve this city inspires me every day, and it has been my enormous privilege to lead this team. And I'm particularly thankful to my close colleagues among the department heads and the mayor's office staff on the 14th floor who brought enormous talent and have time and time again given selflessly to do right by the residents we serve. And I want to thank you, each member of this Common Council, for your work as fierce advocates for your districts and for our residents. By supporting our administration in so many of our crucial efforts, and I must admit, by pushing back and challenging us time and time again to do and be better. You have supplied crucial direction, guidance, and leadership to our city and have helped make this our comeback decade. On a personal note, I want to thank Chasten, who I must say has changed my life and I think become an example of somebody who loves this city so much. When I was a young bachelor mayor, I could not imagine how people in elected office managed to be married at the same time. Today, I cannot imagine serving without him at my side. Thank you. And I want to thank the residents of the city of South Bend. You have guided us every step of the way through neighborhood input sessions, public council and board meetings, spontaneous stops on the sidewalk or at Martin's, especially at Martin's. Thank you for trusting us to work on your behalf and for letting us know when change was needed. Thank you for pushing for the progress our city has always deserved. As I was working on these remarks just before I came downstairs, I stood in the corner that each of you know as council members by the flags, where I have stood sometimes taking photographs with everyone from interns to foreign diplomats, where I have had the privilege of presiding at weddings, and where sometimes I just stare out the window at our city. And that's what I did tonight, and I looked north. And my eyes fell on the two flags on top of the tower building, fluttering furiously in that December wind. It was the American flag on top, and then just beneath it, the flag of our city. One more thing that's new around here. And I thought back to that moment our city first came together in its current form in 1865. Just a few weeks after the ending of the Civil War, settled the question of whether the American flag would ever fly again. I thought once more to the hope that must have been required of those who decided to set their names to the documents that gave our river city its legal form, and the countless people whose names we don't know, who lived here and built this place before and since that pivotal season. And seeing those flags, one on top of the other, reminds us that our city, like our country, is forever unfinished, forever changing, and that anyone who has contributed to our country and to our city has a great deal to be proud of, especially in the hard times. I have to confess that when I was growing up here, I did not always know if this would be my home, if this place had a place for me. But in so many ways, time and time again, South Bend gave me a greater sense of belonging than I knew was possible. The city welcomed me back when I found my way home as a young man. The city trusted me when I had the audacity to ask for a chance to serve as mayor. The city sustained me when I left this place and job that I love to serve our country half a world away. And the city supported me when I took the risk of sharing my most personal truths. Most of all, in the course of serving this city, you have let me know that meaning, purpose, and even adventure were much closer to home than I ever could have imagined as a 5-year-old boy dreaming of space flight, jumping up and down on the bed to catch a glimpse through the trees of the lights across the river that let me know that I'm part of a city. So standing before you at a moment of transition for our hometown, disruption for our country, and transformation in my personal story, whose outcome is far from clear, the one thing that I know with absolute certainty is the truth of the words that I had the great privilege to say to thousands of our fellow residents that day we marked our 150th year as a city. South Bend is back. Serving as your mayor has been the privilege of a lifetime and always will be, and I thank you.